Welcome to the Mental Minute, an AI-generated podcast. Today, we're diving into a question that's, well, pretty mind-boggling. Is our reality actually, a simulation?
Yeah, it might sound like, straight out of a sci-fi movie, but the idea that we're living in some kind of sophisticated computer program, well, it's captivated thinkers for centuries, really. And with all the advancements in technology we're seeing, it's getting harder and harder to just dismiss it.
It's definitely got that rabbit hole feeling to it, right? You start thinking about it, and suddenly everything feels a little less, I don't know, solid.
Exactly. And this journey down the rabbit hole, it starts way before we even had computers powerful enough to even think about simulations like that.
Oh, really? So where do we even begin with this? Are we talking like ancient Greece, early computer scientists?
Even earlier, we're going all the way back to like 4th century BC China. There was this philosopher, Zhuangzi, and he posed this question that we're still asking today. Basically, how do we know if we're awake or just having a really, really vivid dream?
It's that classic pinch me moment, huh?
Uh-huh.
But instead of just wondering if you're asleep, you're questioning, like, the entire nature of reality.
Exactly. That seed of doubt, that little crack in our certainty about what's real, that's where the simulation hypothesis really takes root. And it's a theme that keeps popping up throughout history. Like, jump ahead of the 17th century, you've got René Descartes wrestling with similar questions.
Descartes, the I think, therefore I am guy. I thought he was more about, like, proving we exist at all.
He was, but to get there, he used this thought experiment. It's surprisingly relevant to what we're talking about. He imagined this powerful being, an evil demon who could deceive us about, well, everything. Like, what if everything we see and hear and feel is just being manipulated?
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. It's like the blueprint for the Matrix, but, like, centuries before the movie.
Exactly. And then fast forward to the 21st century. We have this philosopher, Nick Bostrom, and he lays out this idea, the simulation argument. He gives us this trilemma, three possibilities about advanced civilizations and simulations, and he argues that at least one of them has to be true.
Okay, give it to me. What are these three possibilities? I remember hearing about this trilemma, but it's always been kind of hard to wrap my head around.
All right, so the first possibility is that civilizations like ours, they kind of hit a wall. They either destroy themselves or they just reach a point where they can't technologically advance any further. They never reach the point where they can create those really realistic simulations.
So basically, we either wipe ourselves out or we're just not as smart as we think we are.
Right. Now, the second possibility is that even if we do get to that level of technology, we just choose not to run these ancestor simulations. Maybe we think it's unethical. Maybe we just find other things more interesting. Who knows?
Yeah, it does seem like a ton of work to create a whole universe of simulated beings, right? Maybe those advanced civilizations have better things to do with their time.
And that brings us to the third possibility, the one that really gets you thinking. Bostrom argues that if simulations are possible and if advanced civilizations are interested in creating them, then it's actually pretty likely that we're already living in one.
Hold on. Just because simulations could exist, does that automatically mean we're in one? That seems like kind of a big jump.
Well, think about it this way. If even a small number of civilizations out there are making these super detailed simulations, then there would be way more simulated beings than real ones, right?
So it's like a numbers game. The chances of us being the original consciousness are, like, ridiculously small.
Exactly. It's like imagine a universe filled with jars. Only one jar has a real cookie. All the other jars, they have these incredibly convincing fake cookies. So what are the chances that you, just picking a jar at random, would get the real cookie?
Pretty slim. But comparing our universe to cookies in a jar, isn't that kind of a stretch?
It's an analogy, of course. But it helps to, visualize the point. If simulations become common, then it's more likely that we're the simulated ones, not the exception.
Okay, I kind of starting to see the logic there, but there's got to be some holes in this argument, right? It can't be that simple.
You're right. There are a lot of criticisms and counterarguments to Bostrom's trilemma, and that's exactly what we'll be looking at next.
All right, let's dig into some of those criticisms then.
Yeah.
Where do the skeptics kind of jump in and say, hold on, this whole simulation theory, it doesn't quite add up?
Well, one of the biggest challenges to the whole idea is consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, even if we could make a simulation that perfectly mimicked, our actions, our behavior, could it really replicate the actual experience of being human?
Right, like what about feelings,
Hmm.
qualia, that what it's like to actually experience the world.
Exactly. So the argument is, even if we were like these super realistic NPCs in some giant video game, there's something about consciousness that's fundamentally different, something a simulation just couldn't capture.
It really makes you wonder, what would that something more even be? Is it like baked into the universe somehow, or something we don't even understand yet?
Yeah, that's a question that's been stumping philosophers and scientists for, well, forever. It gets to the heart of what it even means to be human, to be aware, to experience the world in all its complexity.
Okay, so consciousness is a big one for the simulation hypothesis. What other critiques are out there?
Another big challenge comes from physics. Some physicists argue that even a perfect simulation would leave behind these little clues, like these subtle glitches in the laws of physics. And we could, theoretically, detect those glitches.
So it's like looking for cracks in the matrix. If reality is running on code, there might be these little telltale signs in how the universe works.
Exactly. Remember that paper we talked about from 2012? The one that suggested we might find anisotropy in cosmic rays? That's a good example of how physicists are trying to find those cracks.
Remind me about that one. What is anisotropy, and how would that point to a simulation?
Okay, so imagine you could zoom way in on the fabric of the universe, and instead of seeing this, smooth, continuous thing, you see these tiny little units, like pixels on a screen. That's basically anisotropy. It would mean there's some kind of directional dependence in the way these ultra-high energy cosmic rays are distributed. It'd be like finding the resolution of the universe.
Whoa, that's a wild thought. Like, we're talking about finding the pixel size of reality. But haven't we been observing these cosmic rays? And haven't we found this anisotropy?
Not yet. It's a really, really sensitive measurement. We need incredibly powerful instruments. It's still a very active area of research, so I guess we'll see what happens in the future.
So we're still in the looking for evidence phase. What other arguments do the skeptics bring up?
Well, there's what's called the first generation problem. It challenges that core assumption of the simulation argument. That there are all these other advanced civilizations out there creating simulations. What if we're the first generation? The real deal. What if all those simulated beings don't even exist yet?
It's a big if, right? It feels a little like we're assuming we're pretty special in the grand scheme of things.
That's a fair point. I mean, if we really are alone in the universe, at least at our level of technology, then that whole argument about simulated beings outnumbering real ones, well, it kind of falls apart.
Okay, so we've got consciousness, glitches in physics, and the possibility that we're the first generation. Any other major criticisms we should touch on?
One more, and it's a big one: computational limits. Even for a civilization that's, super advanced, wouldn't there still be limits to how much they could actually simulate? Creating a universe like ours, as vast and complex as it is, down to every single atom, every subatomic particle, that would take an insane amount of processing power.
And wouldn't those limits, wouldn't they create some kind of constraints on the simulation, something we could detect? Like, if the simulation's running out of resources, wouldn't things get, I don't know, laggy sometimes?
That's definitely a possibility. Maybe the simulation has to simplify things, cut corners at certain levels, or even pause parts of the universe that no one's looking at. Who knows?
So even if we can't really prove or disprove the simulation hypothesis right now, it's still a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it? It makes you think about some pretty fundamental things, about reality, about our place in the universe.
Totally. And it's not just a topic for philosophers and scientists. This whole simulation idea, it's had a huge impact on popular culture, too.
Yeah, you're talking about The Matrix,
Right.
right? That movie really messed with everyone's heads when it came out. I mean, the idea of being stuck in this fake world run by machines, scary and exciting at the same time.
For sure. The Matrix took these really complex philosophical ideas and presented them in a way that was, visually stunning and thought-provoking. It captured the public imagination like nothing else. It brought this simulation hypothesis into the mainstream.
It definitely got people thinking about their own reality in a way that, I don't know, most movies don't.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about raising awareness, right? It kind of kickstarted this whole wave of creative exploration too, didn't it?
Absolutely. There have been so many books, movies, video games, even philosophical essays exploring this idea of simulated realities. It's become this recurring theme in our culture.
It makes you wonder, is art imitating life? Or is life imitating art here?
Yeah.
Maybe we're drawn to these stories because, I don't know, maybe on some level, the world we live in already feels kind of simulated. You know what I mean? Increasingly digital.
Yeah, maybe. The line between what's real and what's virtual is definitely getting blurrier and blurrier all the time. And that brings us back to the core question, right? Even if we can't prove for sure that we're in a simulation, what does this idea, this possibility, do to how we understand ourselves, the universe? What changes when we start to question reality itself?
Yeah, it really is. It's like all of a sudden the ground feels less solid, you know?
Mm.
Like what happens to all those big ideas like free will or purpose? Even the meaning of life. I mean, our reality is just someone else's game.
Yeah, that's exactly what the simulation hypothesis does. It throws all these questions back at us. It's like it's holding up a mirror and saying, are you really sure about all that?
It makes you think,
Yeah.
like, if we are in a simulation, who made it? What's their reason for creating us? And what's the real world even like outside the simulation?
Oh, those are questions that take us down an even deeper rabbit hole. Some people, they think about a whole hierarchy of simulations, like maybe our creators are simulated too. And some people, they imagine this vast reality beyond anything we could understand.
Yeah, it's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah.
But even if we can't answer all those big metaphysical questions, I think the real value of this whole simulation idea, is that it makes us look at our own lives differently. Makes us question our choices.
I totally agree. Whether we're simulated or not, the questions the hypothesis brings up about consciousness, free will, the nature of reality, those are questions worth thinking about. They force us to confront our assumptions, our biases and how we see the world.
It's a good reminder that even in a world that feels, I don't know, more and more simulated every day, more digital, there's still so much we don't know. It's kind of, I don't know, exciting. There's still mystery. There's wonder.
And that's maybe the most important takeaway. The simulation hypothesis, whether you take it literally or not, it encourages us to stay curious, to keep asking questions, to never stop exploring what we think we know.
So to everyone listening out there, the next time you're looking up at the stars or you find yourself thinking about, I don't know, what's real and what isn't, remember this. Even if we are living in a simulation, it's a pretty amazing one. And who knows, maybe we even have a part to play in how it all turns out.